Good afternoon. It is afternoon. Everyone knows the people at the table today. To my right is our Health Commissioner, the good Dr. Zucker. To my left, immediate left, Robert Mejica, Budget Director Extraordinaire. To his left, Beth Carvey, Special Counsel Extraordinaire. We wanted to give you an update on the coronavirus. I think the more information, the more facts people are getting, the better in a situation like this. The numerical update today is we had 11 cases. We did a significant number of tests overnight. We have a new count of an additional 11, so that's 22 statewide. 8 of the new cases are connected to the attorney from Westchester, the New Rochelle area. 2 are in New York City, and 1 is on Long Island. The 2 in New York City are hospitalized. The 1 in Long Island is also hospitalized. The 8 in Westchester are not hospitalized. What is going to happen is the number will continue to go up. It must, because we are continuing to test more and more. The more you test, the higher number you will have. And as we're testing more, because that is a good thing, you'll see the number going up. Why do we test and find these cases? Because to the best we can, limit the spread, contain the spread, the better. Understanding it is imperfect, but from the China experience, all the experts say the more you can do to contain and limit the spread, the better. And we're doing with these cases the same thing we were doing with the others. You find the case, you then investigate, track back, find as many contacts as possible, contact those people, and go through the same process over and over again. Universe obviously continues to expand, but the more you can do, the better. And that's what we're doing all across the state. A couple of points I'd like to make. Many people are saying to me, you know, I'm getting confused because I get different pieces of information and I don't know who's right, I don't know who's wrong, I don't know who to believe. And that is a serious issue, especially with this. You know, you watch TV all day or you listen to the radio and you have all these different sources, you have different politicians, and it sounds like they're saying different things. I think that's compounding the situation. I've talked in the past about why do people get afraid. You only get afraid for 2 reasons in life. 1, I'm uncertain of the information. I don't trust it, or I'm confused by it. Or 2, the information I'm hearing is so disturbing that I'm afraid. Here, the facts do not merit the level of anxiety that we are seeing. I believe it's being generated because of the first point, which is people don't know the truth. They don't know the facts. So let's just clear up some facts. Whenever I go to a doctor, and I like doctors generically, I like you especially, but my sister's a doctor, I like doctors. But I like to say to the doctor, before they say, let me tell you what I think, let me tell you my opinion. Before you give me your opinion, give me the facts, okay? Let me understand the facts, and then I'll hear your opinion. But there's a difference between opinions and facts. And people, I think, now need facts versus opinions. Opinions are relevant, but give me the facts. Different stories on whether or not this will leave, the virus will end when it gets to the summer, whether or not it's seasonal. We don't know. Short answer is we don't know. Normal flu, you get into the summer months, the flu dissipates. It doesn't go away entirely, by the way, but it dissipates. Factually, we don't know if this virus will dissipate in the summer. Different opinions, but nobody knows. When do we have a vaccine? President said that he is working very hard, pushing the companies to develop a vaccine, and there should be one soon. But the CDC and the health professionals say not until 12 months minimum, maybe 18. Who's right, who's wrong? The truth is, yes, you can get a company that may be able to develop a vaccine in several months, but that vaccine then has to be tested, and that's how you get to 12 months, 18 months. Should I be using hand sanitizer before I go out, while I'm out? During the normal flu season, doctors would recommend hand sanitizer. And this communicates the way the normal flu tends to communicate. So during the flu season, they would say, use hand sanitizer. During this period, especially if you are in the vulnerable population to coronavirus and the flu, by the way, then you may want to take extra precautions. That only makes sense. How does it spread? It's a respiratory illness. It spreads either someone who was infected sneezes on their hands, puts their hand on a surface. The virus can live on a surface for a number of hours, unclear how many hours. Safe number would be 24 hours. Or they sneeze, cough, droplets are in the air. They say the range is 6 feet. What does that mean? It means theoretically the droplets, if you're in the 6-foot range, you are especially vulnerable. But where they get communication is in a closed environment, in a vehicle where you're traveling, and the air is limited. In a home setting where you're in the same room with a person for a prolonged period of time. But otherwise, it spreads basically as the flu would spread. Should we shake hands? I have doctors who say to me every flu season, you should say people should not shake hands. They say it to me every flu season. I've never said that. Why? Because I'm a politician, I shake hands. You shouldn't hug. They've said that during a normal flu season. I've never said that either. I'm Italian-American descent, I'm a hugger. But precautions during the flu season, don't shake hands and don't hug. During this season with coronavirus, yeah, if you want to be take precautions, don't shake hands, don't hug. Tell the other person so you don't offend them. Well, the number is increasing. The number will increase because this will spread, and the number will increase because it is math. The more people you test, the more positives you are going to find. And I'm a little perturbed about the daily angst when the number comes out and the number is higher. Perturbed meaning I'm perturbed that people get anxious every time the number goes up. The number has to go up if you continue to test. The number can't go down, right? We're not going to detect fewer cases than yesterday. The number has to go up. That's why we're testing, and that's why you run it through. It's a matter of opinion. There's no fact. It's a matter of opinion, but most informed sources say you will see a significant spread of this virus through the population. The most important point is all of this. So what? So what? What does it mean? And that is the most relevant question. The so what, 80% of the people who get it will self-resolve, may never even know they had it, like the flu. Some mild symptoms, you go through your life, and it resolves. 20% will get ill, require hospitalization. The people who are in the vulnerable population, senior citizens, immune compromised, people with underlying illnesses. What am I worried about as governor? People say to me, what are you worried about? I'm worried about undue fear and anxiety. Hence why I'm constantly trying to communicate facts. I'm worried about nursing homes, senior care facilities, any senior congregate setting. That's what happened in the state of Washington. That is something we worry about. Personally, my own family, my mother is elderly. She doesn't want to admit it. She doesn't believe it. She doesn't act that way. I'll deny saying that I said that, but she should take extra precautions. I have friends who are HIV positive, who are battling cancer, who have compromised immune systems. They have to be careful, and they have to be more careful than usual. But that is what this is, which is the same as it would be for the normal flu, right? Who does the flu normally affect? Seniors, immune compromised, people with underlying illnesses. So those are the facts. Those are the inarguable facts, not opinions. Those are facts. And when you know the facts, this daily mania of the numbers going up, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. You know the facts, it's reassuring, because on these facts, there is no reason for undue anxiety. Questions?
Can you say anything about the Long Island case, and is that person hospitalized at Stony Brook University?
Doctor, do you know?
The patient's not at Stony Brook, no. And that patient's 42 years old and is improved. Has improved. Has improved.
In the intensive care unit, though?
No.
Not the intensive care unit.
You said you did significant number of tests overnight. How many is significant?
We do them on a rolling basis, but we're doing about 100, 200 per day. We're in the process now of using other laboratories. We just were approved by the federal government to use other laboratories. So that's where the testing is bringing in the increase in the testing capacity.
What do we know about the new Westchester cases? You said they are tied to the...
They are all tied to the attorney in New Rochelle.
Are they all from New Rochelle? Are they in their homes? Are they hospitalized?
I don't believe any of them are hospitalized.
None are hospitalized, no. And they're from the area.
Okay, and do we know about the original man? Is he still in the intensive care unit?
He's getting better. He's getting better.
But he's still hospitalized?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but let me take a step back. Now, see, John, you can take those facts, okay? We had 11 cases. The only several were hospitalized of the 11. They were at home. All of them are getting better. The person who was most affected, the attorney, or most vulnerable, the attorney from Westchester, who had an underlying respiratory illness, so is in that vulnerable percentage, he's getting better, right? So those are facts, right? It's not opinion, it's not mythology. Those are facts. People at home, recovering at home for the main part.
Do we know of the 22 statewide how many are hospitalized versus how many are at home?
We have four that are hospitalized.
4 that are hospitalized, and where those are, do you know?
Well, they're in the city, out on the island, and up in Westchester.
So of the 8 in Westchester, we had kind of 3 buckets yesterday. We had the lawyer and his family, we had the driver, and then we had the second family. Do any of those new 8 fit into those 3 buckets, especially related to the driver?
Well, there is, I always try to be careful about giving out personal information, obviously, about patients and families. They are tied back to that original person who is in the hospital. And then, obviously, what ends up happening is that there's a friend of the person who is in the hospital, and then that person has a friend, and then they have family and relatives, and that's what we do in epidemiology to track it back. So I don't want to get too specific about any individual.
There was APAC said that it had reason to believe that people who had been in contact with this individual attended its conference in Washington, D.C. Do you have confirmation that any of the cases that are confirmed went to that conference or did any travel around the
I'm
country?
not aware of that. I'd have to check that.
Governor, students in the Chalmont district just self-quarantined based on the fact that their parents had traveled to high-risk countries. Is that something that you think is recommended? And also, what sort of guidance are you giving to physicians who are dealing with families that may have concerns of that type?
So if I understand your question correctly, you're saying that individuals who may have been or want to travel to countries or have...
Their parents have been at high-risk countries, so
And they
apparently
come back?
these two students self-quarantined on their own. Is that a measure you think is necessary?
I think that if they're from the countries which we are concerned about, high-risk countries, then when they come back, they should be quarantined at that point, if they're from those regions, as we have done with those from the Hubei province and other areas of the world.
In that similar stream, 2 school districts in Westchester County are closing for 2 days to disinfect their schools, but they're closing. Do you think that plays into this fear aspect? Would you recommend other school districts doing that?
It's a local decision whether or not they close the school, but this is the funny warp we're in. Not really funny, just a warp. You have schools that close to disinfect during the normal flu season. It's not all that unusual. They will close to disinfect during the flu season. So they're doing that here again. But now everything is viewed through this, coronavirus. So no, it's a local decision, but if they think it's wise, fine.
Commissioner, did you meet earlier today with local public health officials, and how would you assess their ability to respond to this right now?
I haven't had a chance to meet with them. I believe that meeting will be happening, but I'll probably be tied up. But I do know my team is.
The number of cases in Westchester, the 1,000 cases that have been asked to self-quarantine, has that number gone up? And also, what's the difference between those that are under required quarantine, so the people that are actually have tested positive, and then those that have been asked to self-quarantine? What's the difference between that?
It's a good question, Bernadette. The technical word is not quarantine. We've been using quarantine. It's isolation. So isolation, quarantine. There are some people, for example, people who are in the synagogue. You have a large setting and hundreds of people, and the attorney was in the synagogue. Out of an abundance of caution, it would be helpful if, because maybe you were possibly exposed, that you agree to quarantine, isolate yourself for 14 days. We don't have any direct reason. You haven't tested positive, you're not symptomatic, but we're all good citizens. We're all trying to do what we can to stop the spread. That would be helpful. That is, let's call that voluntary, okay? Abundance of caution. There are then people who test positive, who we say, you need to be quarantined. Now, you can say, fine, I'll be quarantined, I'll go home, and I'll be quarantined. You could say, and everybody has, by the way. But if you said, no, I don't want to be quarantined, that's a place where you could be ordered to be quarantined. We haven't had to do that with anyone, but that is the distinction. Where you have tested positive, et cetera, a health official says you could infect other people, given what we know. You should be quarantined. You agree. So we also call that voluntary quarantine. But they're two different buckets, if you will.
So how many
DOH officials checking on the
Yes,
voluntary?
they are checking. If you say, I'm going to go home and stay home, yeah, but if it is a situation where we need you to stay home, then health officials will check on you.
Well, not
Do we
if
have
you're
a number?
voluntarily staying home?
I'm sorry?
Do we have a number on how many health officials are checking in on these individuals?
Local health departments and the state health department checks on you.
How many individuals are self-isolated and how many individuals are kind of, we really need you to isolate?
The smaller bucket is in the 2 or 3 dozen range.
And then the larger bucket?
Oh, is in the multiple hundreds.
Well, you said 1,000 the other days.
It's still in that range, maybe higher by now. Because look, just the Westchester, you have schools, you have synagogues, et cetera. So the number adds up quickly.
Do you have an exact number though for people?
We can get you the number. I don't.
Mayor Bill de Blasio said earlier today that they needed more testing kits from the CDC. How many testing kits does the state have at Wadsworth and New York City run that? Are there enough?
Testing kits?
Yeah.
Do you know the testing kits?
I know what you're talking about, the swabs. I mean, we have thousands of kits. I can't give the exact number. We could look into that. We had more shipped down and, from other parts of the state.
You mean the sampling kits?
Yeah, the diagnostic kits. And those will cover how many patients?
I'd have to check for the exact number, but we will be sure we have enough for those who need to be tested.
And how many workers are quarantined at Lawrence Hospital and the New York City Hospital where the Westchester man visited?
Well, there were 8 individuals at Lawrence Hospital that we were evaluating, and we're checking the results on those individuals. There was one that was positive, and there were others that were negative, and I can't give you the answer on the New York City numbers.
How do you determine who gets the kits? If somebody in the North Country has a really bad flu and thinks they might have corona, what's the criteria, in other words, for testing?
So, as we spoke about yesterday, and the need to speak with your healthcare professional to get an assessment of what your own clinical condition is and whether it warrants to be tested. As people have a lot of other issues. People have.
That goes back to my first question. Was that the healthcare professionals, some of them, and I don't know why, are telling patients, "I haven't received guidance on this, so I don't know." Are they not looking in the right place?
So there is a letter that I put out to the health professionals about coronavirus, which went out the other day. So, and I will be following up, and we will be having more webinars and conversations with the health professionals. I understand it's a fluid situation. I understand that maybe the questions that they have we will address again and reiterate, and it's probably helpful to keep bringing it up.
Yeah, but let me just clarify what I think. I think you're asking, you're responding to 2 different situations. On the materials to sample and test, well, they don't test, they sample, which was the question from the Times. We have supplies of sampling equipment. Anyone who needs those supplies, Department of Health can provide. I don't believe they've said no to anyone in terms of the sampling. They don't do the testing. Department of Health does the testing. They do the sampling. So any health professional will get these sampling swabs. They can take the sample. It then goes to the Department of Health. They actually do the testing. So Department of Health handles that. The testing is what is now where we're bringing in other labs also to increase that capacity. So that's how that piece of the process works. The second question is, who can that health professional test? It's really up to his or her judgment pursuant to a protocol. The CDC has a protocol which basically the Department of Health informs them, because it can't be you just test anyone who wants to be tested, right? With this fear, you'd have literally potentially millions of people saying, it's like you have people who get the more anxious personalities, as I said to my brother, more anxious personalities. So there is a protocol as to who should be tested, did they travel, et cetera. But everyone has had the materials. We haven't heard anyone who said they don't have the materials. I'm sorry.
Do you know what role the federal money is playing or will play in New York State?
Look, they are making a big deal out of the supplemental. I'm sure it's a good thing as opposed to a bad thing. For the entirety of the state of New York, we get something like $35 million, which it starts at how many billion? 8 billion?
8.3 billion.
8.3 billion. New York State gets 35 million out of 8.3 billion. And by the way, the states are on the front lines here. I mean, you look at what we're doing, you don't see any federal officials running around here taking samples or doing anything else. So it's all managed, all administered by the states. I said to the vice president said, don't worry, I'll make sure the states get the funds they need, because he was a former governor, and New York State gets 35 million. We, on our own, allocated 40 million, and they have an $8 billion supplemental, and New York State gets $35 million?
So that's insufficient.
Yes, it's insufficient.
And what could it be used for?
Do you know the federal money?
It's going to be used for outreach, for testing. There's a whole list of things they're used for, things we use it for. Our point is that we are spending, if this continues and the emergency continues for weeks, we will be spending much more than that, as we go on a weekly basis.
Governor, there's some major sporting events coming up in New York. There's the state high school basketball tournament. There's the NCAA tournament that's coming. Those are events that bring a lot of people from a lot of different places together in one place. Do you have any concerns about hosting those events in New York?
Well, look, John, we have to keep going back to the bottom line. What is the bottom line? The bottom line is, if you are in one of the subgroups that is vulnerable for this virus, which is the same definition as being vulnerable for the flu, then you should take precautions, right? It's the same applies.
Is there a timeline for getting some of that state money out to county health officials?
We're working with the county health officials. Their need now is not really financial that we have heard of.
We had Niagara County on the show today, and they said they could use money yesterday.
Yeah, well, look, everybody needs money yesterday, right? I mean, that is the common denominator for anyone you have on the show. The answer is, I needed money yesterday.
Kind of following up on what John asked, is there any concern that eventually this could have an effect or impact on the broader New York economy, though?
Oh, if it continues, well, look at the stock market, right? It could have effect on the national economy, could have an effect on the global economy, depending on how it's perceived, right? And New York will go with the national tide. So it's not going to be just a state issue. If it has an impact, it's going to be a national or a global impact, by the way.
Is this something that could disrupt the budget at all, or something we need to be done?
You have a national recession or a global recession? Yeah.
Can you comment on the status of the Westchester attorney? I know you guys said yesterday he was in the ICU, but he was stabilized. Has he been put into like a medically induced coma or anything like that?
And like I said, I usually don't like to go into the patient conditions, but he's improving, and he's improving.
Can you share any details on the 3 new people that are in the hospital? Are they just older, or do they have health issues, reasons why they're hospitalized?
I don't know. And again, we want to inform people, but we also want to respect privacy.
So to build on the question about budget, normally this time of year there's kind of a frenzy. You're spending a lot of your time negotiating policy. I'm wondering, how is the time you're correctly devoting to this impacting that? And you were talking about a trip to learn more about marijuana. Is that still happening? How is this impacting the larger negotiations?
This has been almost all-consuming for me. Again, the greatest obstacle that we face here is not understanding the situation, or fear, or undue anxiety. The only way I know to combat that is to communicate with the people of the state and try to clear up any misinformation they may have or any confusion they have. Plus, this is a management logistical monster to deal with, right? Working with all the local health departments, the testing, getting other labs online, et cetera. So we've dealt with emergencies before. They're normally shorter in duration, right? Mother Nature has thrown everything at us, but it's normally 3, 4, 5 days, 7 feet of snow in Buffalo, a week. This has been longer, and it will be longer, because what's going to happen, Jimmy, is those numbers are going to keep going up. And right now, people look at these numbers like they're looking at the stock market, you know, and the numbers are going up, and the stock market going down every day, and it starts to create an impression. I keep saying, of course the numbers have to go up because we're testing, and we're testing more, and the more you test, the higher the numbers are going to go. And by the way, we're testing people who are in the causal chain anyway. So that is, I think that's a top priority for me, and it has been all-consuming. We know we have to get done in the budget. We know the agenda in the budget. I'm not going to shortchange the items that we have in the budget, and I hope that we can get that done on time. But this is a priority. There's no doubt about that. Not only I can do this.
Have there been certain hospitals designated to treat people who are positive and require hospitalization?
No.
So it's just whatever hospital?
There are certain hospitals that are designated to help test. Say that again, please, Anne. Is that a medically related question? Is that a coronavirus question? When will I be ready to endorse Joe Biden? So are you assuming that I will endorse Joe Biden? That's your assumption.
So are you considering endorsing Bernie Sanders?
Good comeback, good comeback. There are other options. No politics today.
Before you came out, the Westchester County Health Department had said that there were 21 cases in Westchester.
Yeah.
Is it safe to assume that number is incorrect, and do you have any insight on how
Well,
that
you're assuming also now. This is a
I-
day of
well,
assumption.
you said 18, so I'm assuming that your number is correct.
You assumed correctly.